everyone. I am super excited to talk to you about this topic because it's one that I personally have had to work through. And now being on the other side of the table, it's so clear to me all the things that I should have been doing to get kind of to advocate for myself and get to the places that I wanted to get to. So let's start with the very first tip that I have. And by the way, this very much is going to be a back and forth. So if you have any thoughts or questions, or you want to practically get me to get very concrete about what I'm saying, just shout at me. So the first step is understanding what your company or your organization considers as impact. And this might sound obvious, but it's so critical. Let me give you a very concrete example. When I was early in my career as a people manager, I thought that if I was an amazing people manager and my PMs were just performing and my team was jiving, that obviously I'll get promoted and I will get rewarded. But that wasn't the case. My org really cared about shipping and velocity. And they didn't care that you onboarded people. Well, they cared, but it wasn't considered impact to show care for your team and to onboard your team properly. It was all about where you hitting the growth numbers. I was on a growth team. And that was a big learning for me because sometimes we have our own ideas of what the world should be and what impact should be, but you need to kind of force yourself to understand the reality. Like, what do people care about? What are we measuring as a company? What are we measuring when the head of your org is talking about success? And you need to make sure you align your own goals to those large goals. Now, if you feel that the large goals are not in line with yours, that's something to also be aware of. Because sometimes, and I'll talk about this in my last point, sometimes you're not in the right place and you shouldn't be actually trying to climb this particular ladder. So it's still a very good practice for you to just be clear with yourself about what the company cares about right now, what your org cares about, and try to align yourself. And if you cannot align yourself, that's still signal, because that tells me that you're probably not in the right place. So let's move to the next point, which is understanding your strengths. So me personally, I am a major introvert. I work much more, like I get a lot of energy when I sit down. I think very clearly about our strategy, or I think very clearly about a process improvement. And I love my teams, but I don't get a lot of energy from things like going out and recruiting and networking. And so I just aligned like, okay, I'm trying to get promoted over the next year. I'm not going to do recruiting. Instead, I'm going to work on when people get on board, how do I up-level them? 2, I'm going to shape the most amazing products and just knock it out of the park with my product metrics. So you really need to be honest with yourself about what your strengths are. And then again, come up with your plan, and that plan should align with your strengths. Now, the reality is a lot of times in your band, there's like a bare minimum that you need to meet. So yes, I'm a massive introvert, but I still needed to participate in recruiting somehow. So I did interviews, for example. So I'm not saying to completely abandon things, but you really need to 80-20 it and put 80% of your energy in the 20% of things that you know you do really, really well, and then cover your bases. Let me just check my notes to make sure I am actually telling you guys the real deal. So very practically, what I mean is you've written down on a piece of paper what your company cares about, at least your understanding of that world. Also write down, these are my strengths. And therefore, these are the kinds of activities that I know give me energy, I'm exceptionally good at, and I'm going to double down on. What should come out of that exercise is also the things you're not going to do. So for me, it meant I'm no longer going to go to too many networking events. It's just not going to give me the bang for buck that I'm trying to achieve for my promotion. So item number, by the way, I want to really emphasize number 2 before we go to number 3. It can be really hard for certain groups to kind of sit in their own and say, I am worthy, I am exceptionally good at building amazing products and coming up with great product strategy. This is something that we need to work on. Yay, Irina, I see you. But this is something that we also need to be very, very mindful of. It not only helps you when you're thinking of promotions, but the more you repeat to yourself, I am exceptional at building like product strategies and building amazing products. It kind of flows through your body and just makes you a much better product manager anyway, regardless of promotion. So it's like I had a manager, a woman who used to come off as really bold, and she told me about her trick, which is she just had little bits of paper that like against the wall that are just like, I am amazing. I built blah blah blah, like all of her greatest accomplishments. She just pasted it on the wall again to remind herself that she's amazing and she needs to know her worth and kind of work from that place of understanding. The more clarity you have about reality, the better. You don't want to, some of us have bad practices of saying the negative things, but you want to make sure that you stop that voice and you really start to feel comfortable saying that you are freaking amazing, because I'm pretty sure you're amazing. All right, I'll move right along now to point number 3. Point number 3 is about building a network of supporters and sponsors. So let me take a moment here to kind of describe what I mean by sponsors. Sponsors are typically not the same as your mentor. This is someone in your organization, or at least someone that's within your sphere of influence, that's likely going to be in the room when your promotion discussions will be happening, or that's actually even above that. Basically, you want to make sure you can find people that are high enough that can understand what your strengths are, what you've accomplished, can help you figure out the gaps and how to get there, but also that will advocate for you when the time comes. If you're a manager, you know how it works. When you're in the room, it's all about how is this person's story being told. So you could do the most amazing work if your story is not getting told well. The impact will not come across. And this sometimes needs to happen in a short period of time. So you want to make sure you have as many people as possible that are influential in that network that can help lift your case up. I'll tell you personally, for me, like I said, I'm a major introvert. I can be pretty awkward. I have a very thick accent. So I didn't see myself as someone that builds connections with people that I don't know. I build really deep connections with people that are in my close circle. But I decided to challenge myself when I was at Shopify. We had a new VP of product, and I set up time with her. And I was very open and vulnerable. I told her name is Manju. She's not there anymore. And I said, Manju, I really struggle with building sponsors, and I want to learn. I would love if you could be my sponsor. And by that, I mean, I want to get feedback, because Manju, like, I have so much energy. Like, I want to go and I want somebody who can help guide me. And literally, that's what I said. I didn't try to be somebody else. I didn't try to be overly polished. I was vulnerable and I just said the thing. I was very clear, though, that I was hungry and I was going to take feedback, and I was going to take that feedback and turn it into lemonade. And that's the best relationship I've had from a sponsorship perspective, because Manju took to that. So again, figure out the people that are influential, literally draw up the map. I don't care how intimidating they seem, write their names down, and I want to challenge you to reach out to these people and try to connect. The other thing I would say is I've tried to connect with a number of people. It doesn't always work out, and that's okay. Some of it is a numbers game. It's kind of like when you're applying to college. You apply to a bunch of colleges. Similarly, do your best effort to reach out to a number of sponsors. Some will just peter off, but when you see that you have a connection and this person cares about your interest, then I would say really double down. Like, go out and try to, even when, like, for example, I used to meet with Manju, say I was planning to meet with her every month, and she was like, we should meet every week. I was like, oh my God, I don't know what to talk about Manju. Like, I'm super awkward. Like, what am I going to talk about Manju every week? But I stuck to it. I met with her every week. And then it just gets easier, number one. And number two, we're all just human. Manju just also wants to shoot the. Okay, I'll be careful with my language, but Manju just wants to chat with somebody that's on the ground and that can help her see from a different perspective. So a lot of times those relationships, they're not one way. She's invested in me because she cares about me, and also because I can help her see things that she can't from where she is. So definitely, if you're walking away from this, absolutely, I'm begging you to write out what your company's goals are, write up what your strengths are, and if you can give me by the end of this week, obviously you won't give it to me, but if you can note down like the 3 sponsors that you're going to try to connect with that are in your sphere of influence, that will mean a lot to me, because I think that's going to make a big difference. But it's not just those high power player sponsors. for me personally, finding even my friends or people that are a few levels ahead of me that have gone through the process that I feel I can open up with and just say, hey, I'm trying, look, you did this last year. How did you get promoted? I'm trying to get promoted. Do you have any advice for me? That has actually been incredibly helpful for me. I have a WhatsApp group with PMs that are actually in other companies. And with them, I can be a lot more open about what I'm struggling with, how I'm like trying to get my promo act in order. And they've given me a lot of feedback. So if you have that circle of people that are your peers, I think that they're incredibly valuable as well. And it certainly helps. I mean, as PMs, we get blamed for every single thing. So it definitely helps anyway to have your small cohort of people that you can just chit chat with. And when you have a good day or a bad day, you can have like a network of informal network of peers that you can work with. I found that incredibly helpful. So again, work on your sponsors, but definitely I would say try to find your own network that are your peers or maybe slightly above you that you can connect with. All right, number 3. This one can be really hard for some of us women. When you do a thing, tell everyone. Tell everyone. I actually think someone that does that incredibly well is Deb Liu. And it's not that Deb Liu goes around saying, yo, look at all the things I shipped. But she writes these amazing thought pieces where she's sharing advice. But that's one way to let the world see that she has her world in order and that she gets shit done and that she knows how to influence people and that she knows how to hire and all the other tips that she's giving. So something that I found incredibly helpful is if you struggle with just straight up being like, yo, I'm the best, I ship this thing, there are a couple of tricks that you can use. One is praising your team. Whenever your team ships something, you don't have to make it a Monica thing, but you go all the way to the highest top that you can get to and be like, look at this amazing thing we shipped. And the more you can tie the amazing thing back to what the company cares about in terms of metrics, the better. But the more, like literally, I have a practice every week. I have to say something positive that my team did. I broadcast it and I force myself every week. That's, again, great practice where you're not shining light on yourself, but you're certainly letting people know that you're getting shit done. So that's one way. Another way is just publishing notes about, hey, this is what I learned when I did X. That's something that I mentioned, like Deb Liu is incredibly good at. You cannot wait for other people to praise you. Like, I feel that we, in school, we write our exams, the teacher looks at your paper and decides, oh my God, what a fantastic job Lisa has done. I'm going to give her an A++, and in fact, we're going to get her to skip one level in class. Nobody's going to do that for you at work usually. So it's a mindset shift. Now part of your job is to start to promote yourself. So not only do you need to do the thing, you need to carry it past the finish line. And what that means is you need to brag about it. Tell everybody that would hear. When I was at Shopify, literally a few things that we ship, I used to send Slack messages to Toby, our CEO, and be like, the team just minimized, improved search, loading time, 2x. And then he, first of all, is like, who the hell is this? But also, wow, that's amazing. And that's how I got to really know Toby. So push yourself. If you think, especially if you're one of those people that like literally get sweaty when they're bragging, I want you to push yourself. If you think you've bragged, say, can I brag anymore? And push yourself and see if there's any other way that you can brag. It's exceptionally important. And please continue to remember that we're not in school anymore. It's a different world here. As a manager, I can't tell you how many, it's like so stark. There are a few people that's all they do when they come chat with me is brag. And then there's all those other people. I'm like, oh my God, if only you knew how bold some people are. Like, so really don't worry about appearing boastful. It's not about that. It's very hard for people at the top to understand everything you're doing. And it's your job to make sure that everybody understands the value that you're bringing. How do I brag without coming off as arrogant? That's a really great question. So it's what I said, like praising your team helps. Telling other people, hey, this is what I learned. Like last at Shopify, I shipped something in record time. So I wrote this little, here are 10 steps to ship it in record time. There, I don't need to tell anyone further that I shipped. But now it's very clear that I did the thing, and not only did I do the thing, I'm now a thought leader in this space. So definitely teaching other people. Just think of W. If you're looking for a role model, I think W just like nails it. She's the CEO of Ancestry, and she's a founder here. She was a keynote speaker. Go check out her LinkedIn, her Facebook, and you'll see exactly. Channel your inner W for sure. 2 is praise your team. And then the 3 tip I have is, if you think you're bragging, I want you to take it up a notch. Just ask yourself, like, what does it mean to take it up a notch? And I want you to do that and then see how it feels. More likely than not, you're nowhere close, like the edges of coming off as braggadocious. But that's a really good question. Like, I struggle with it personally. I don't like to come off as arrogant. I'm a middle child. My mother desperately wanted a boy. I was the 3rd girl. So I don't like attention. I'm not used to attention, and I don't like any attention. But I've learned ways to get around that, so people still know the things that I care about and the things that I need them to know. It's part of our job. Amazing. All right. Oh, on what point should we brag so that it registers with leaders? That's a really great question. So remember, the first thing we talked about was, what does your company care about? For example, most of the places I've been at, they care about shipping. So when you're bragging, make sure whatever it is you're bragging is tied to your company goals, so that it's very clear. Oh my God, there is Michelle. She's the one that does all the shipping. And when promo time comes, it's super clear what you are and what you've done, because again, you have been seeing this over time. But it's not always shipping. I know sometimes in my career, we've had like a sprint where we cared about quality. And then when I was like praising my team, I always try to tie to that. So try to figure out like what's hot, what's important to your company right now, and how can you tie your work to that? And there are some cases where you can't, and your work is still exceptionally important. That's like, obviously you can't fake it, but still you have to do the extra work to explain to people why this is important, despite what's shiny and sexy in the company landscape right now. Some of my energy, this is introvert energy. I'm telling you, you need more energy than this, but thank you very much. I appreciate that compliment. And awesome. Let's now move to step number 5. Practicing the crucial conversation. So I'm going to be honest with you. When I was at Shopify, I needed my comp to go drastically up because I had done a very poor job negotiating coming into the company. And then I looked at it and I realized I would go back to Google if my comp doesn't change. So I needed to have that conversation. I was sweating, like literally, like I'd used so much deodorant, but yet I was sweating like it was nobody's business. Because these conversations can be hard. Some of us, for cultural reasons, we've been brought up not to talk about money, or not to talk about, or not to ask for things. We're expected to kind of stay quiet and then be blessed. So it really helps for you to practice the conversation. The more you practice, and by practice, I mean preparing for the actual convo you're going to have, but also having that conversation more and more and more. If I look back at myself last year, I have come so far, and a big part of that is because I've started to say the thing. I started to say the thing that I want, and I am not apologetic about it. It's like, yo, Daria, I'm looking to get promoted in 6 months. I know that's very aggressive, but I would like to chat with you about, where do you see me going, given my ambition and the fact that I'm ready to do whatever it takes to do my best work. And I just say something like as simple as that, and then I pause. You don't have to talk all the time. Just practice your intro sentence, which usually should have something around the lines of like, I'm fired up, I'm energetic, I love this place, I want to do even more. And quite frankly, I want to get promoted by X time. What advice do you have for me? How do you see me trending towards that? And then it's very important for you to then stop and listen. And I've had it go very bad for me. So if it goes very bad for you, fear not. Just again, pat yourself on the back for having a conversation. But when you pause and let the other person speak, many times managers, unfortunately, are not prepared. So give them some grace. They may like harm and ha, but at least now you've let them know what you want, and you're giving them a chance to start to think about how can they position you for what it is you're striving for. Most managers want to be the very best managers they can be, and they want to help you in your career. So it's actually a lot of good signal when you have the conversation. Try really hard to say the thing. Don't go in and have a conversation about like, oh, I really want to work hard. What do you think? No, if you're trying to get promoted in a year, please say, I'm trying to get promoted in a year. I'm exceptionally energized. What advice from you have for me? How do you see me trending there? Like, make sure you say the thing. There needs to be absolute clarity around your goals. Now, let's talk about when it goes wrong. So, I've had those conversations not go as ideal as I wanted. It happened for a number of reasons. One, the manager was surprised. She couldn't believe the timeline I was offering. It was way like she was expecting me to stay for 2 years, but that was not my timeline. And I didn't want to accept average Joe's timeline. I had my timeline and I wanted to share it with her. And she was a little bit taken aback. But honestly, that is okay too. That's signal. Now you've given this person signal about who you are and how you operate. Because that manager quickly, while she didn't like necessarily say the things I wanted to hear immediately, she was able to take that and quickly turn around in the way she thought about me and the kinds of work she threw into my direction and the kinds of feedback she was giving me. So don't get disheartened if the initial conversation doesn't go as planned. That's one. Two, this is a negotiation tactic. When you're having discussions with people, especially when you want something, let them talk. People usually feel good when they have spent a lot of time talking. So I know you might come in and you might be nervous. Say the thing and stop. Let this person talk. Don't backtrack. Don't caveat. Don't try to like explain why it is you have ambitions. Leave it there. I have these ambitions. What are your thoughts on how I can get there? Just stop and listen and try to absorb what you're hearing. Some of it is, sometimes it'll be like, oh, you're amazing. Of course, you're up for, you should be thinking about promotion. That's fantastic. Great. But sometimes you're going to hear real feedback and you may not be able to absorb all of it, but make sure you hear it, make sure you document it, make sure you can repeat it. Because that's going to be what will allow you to up-level yourself. You need to open up your mind to feedback. And if it helps at all, the best people in the world have gotten hard feedback and they were A-okay. I have gotten like really hard feedback that I felt had nothing to do with me. And with time, I found a few that applied to me. And honestly, many times I take 70% of the feedback and I just like park it to the side. And it's not for me. It's not who I want to be. But make sure you hear it and you do your very best to be realistic about, does this apply to me and how can I address it? Because that stuff is gold. Otherwise, you're driving blind. So I'm going to move on. But if you have any questions about anything I'm saying, like honestly, seriously, just shout at me on the messenger and any tips on how to communicate the value of product mindset and thus myself when your upper management come from marketing and consulting. So it really is a bit of a mind game. You need to try your very best to put yourself in your manager's shoes. Like what do you think this person is thinking right now? What do you think they care about? If someone came to have a conversation, and I'm from a marketing world, if someone came and had a conversation with me about product mindset, how can they sell it to me so that I can hear it? Now, I don't want to make any jumps about, so your upper management comes from marketing and consulting. What's funny is that I'm a former consultant, but that's okay. I don't know this individual, so it's really hard for me to like explain, to like truly tell you what the answer is in your specific instance. But I do think that it helps for you yourself to try to put yourself in their shoes. If you were the head of the org and you came from a consulting world, what's the style of comms that works? Is it slides? By the way, like again, I'm a former consultant, but try to understand like what do they seem to care about. Sometimes it helps to just ask. Like just ask in larger settings or ask in one-on-ones. Like, again, I want to get to the next level. What do you think will help unlock me? And then they will tell you like, oh, Asley, I hope I'm pronouncing your name well. You really ought to be speaking more and you really ought to be presenting your ideas more, or you really ought to be doing strategic thinking. And then Again, that's their perspective. Perspective and reality are not always the same thing. But if your leader of the org thinks that you need to do a better job thinking strategically, it might be your strategy, but it also might be that you just need to communicate more. So take what they said and really try to pass through what seems like actual reality and what are the gaps. Daria is here! Daria, I've been name dropping you, by the way. I've been name dropping you. Only in the best way, by the way, you guys. Daria is the best manager ever. I told her that all the time, and it is true. And Daria, I'm keeping it on the record, best manager ever. But to my point earlier, like I said, I've been really working on this, and Daria will tell you I'm not perfect at this. I have put Daria in the most awkward situations where it's just like crap. What the f? By the way, Daria and I we get along really well, but that's because I've been striving at it, and I've gotten so much better because I had that safe space and I had just that drive that I'm going to get better at having these conversations. So if you are having those conversations and it's super awkward, just think of me and Daria and just know that like Daria is still my friend. She still talks to me and I think she's the best manager ever. So it works out in the end. What's the appropriate time to chat to the manager about promotion? If you just joined a new company, like 6 months, like honestly, for me personally, I think that the more clear you can be about your goals, the better. So it's not like you don't want to go to someone and say, hey, manager, I'm trying to get promoted and I joined last week. Like, obviously, that seems a bit that your judgment might be called into question. What you instead, I think, works is if you are super ambitious, you can start softer. I joined a month ago, and I just want to let you know that I'm exceptionally ambitious. I have a huge appetite. I just want to stretch myself and I want to grow as fast as possible. That can be your intro conversation where you're starting to help that person understand you. So, like, if you come back in a month and you say, hey, it's our next career conversation, again, I'm not asking to get promoted tomorrow, but what does it look like at the next level and what's my gap? Again, this is not confrontational at all. It's exceptionally helpful to the manager so they can tell you exactly the gaps that you need to fill. I think actually the problem comes in when you don't speak early enough and then you just slam someone and say, hey, I'm trying to get promoted yesterday. Daria will tell you, I may or may not have pulled a few of those kinds of things with her. But then you put your manager in this situation where they're like gasping for like, whoa, what's going on? Is this person at flight risk and all of that? So the more you can say it, the earlier you say it, the better. And you can be very clear about your time frame. Like you understand it's not going to happen tomorrow, but it's definitely something you care about. How can we get there? Amazing. And what about when your leader's career goals are directly opposed to yours? Oh my goodness. For example, they are new and they want you to stay longer so the team keeps running. You're actually jumping to my point number 7, and I'm going to say the thing. Sometimes when you've had the hard convos, it'll allow you to uncover whether or not this is the place for you to achieve your goals. And sometimes it is not. It may not be your manager. It might actually be some organizational structural things. It might actually be something about you as you're starting to have the conversation that helps you realize, oh my goodness, actually, I don't want to do this thing. I want to do that. Sometimes you have to leave. Sometimes leaving your role to somewhere else is the career movement that you need in your life. So again, I would say make sure you validate that you understand the feedback you get and where it's coming from, and try to assume good intent. Try to put yourself in the person's seat. But I also want you to be open to a world where this may not be a fit, and that is still success because now you've said the thing and you're now aware of your reality, and you can take action towards it. So it's almost like the last resort, but I definitely want to put that on the table for all of us. Try to put yourself in the very best place for you to do your life's work. And sometimes it means moving somewhere else. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make the current company a bad place. It's just not a fit for the thing that you're trying to do. Any advice when you're asking those questions on what are areas of opportunity to get to the next level? However, the manager is not able to identify those gaps. This is a very good question. So if I ask somebody an open-ended question of, what does it look like operating at the next level? Another way you might frame it is, If I were to ask for a promotion today, what will your response be? Because then they start to, if they don't think you're ready for promo, they start to like come up with concrete reasons why you're not ready. Because again, sometimes when someone just comes up to you and say, how can I operate at the next level? I can see how that might feel too abstract. But if you bring it to concrete things like that, like if I was to be up for promo tomorrow, like what would your response be? And that will push somebody. And if they don't have an answer, at the very least, most likely they'd be like, yo, let me go think about it. And even if they don't say, let me go think about it, many times they will go think about it and they'll come back to you in ways that you may not have been prepared for. Um, Amazing. So I think I'd already jumped to number 7, which is you might need to leave. But my number 6 step was around planning to have multiple conversations. Certainly see this as you and your manager working together through the dance. It shouldn't be like I'm going to go ambush my manager. I'm telling you this from experience. Don't do it. Instead, start early and expect to go back and forth, expect to hear feedback, go back, work on it, talk to other people, the people that you trust and love, and get feedback. Figure out which of the feedback is yours. Like I said earlier, I personally, I don't always internalize all the feedback. I look at it, I decide where I am going, and I choose the feedback that seems to resonate with me towards where I'm going. That doesn't mean like I discard hard feedback, but I only focus on the feedback that's going to help me to be the person that I want to be. And so step 6 is around really orchestrate things so that it's multiple conversations. And I know those conversations can be uncomfortable, but the more you do it, the better it gets. I feel like I'm so much better than I was last year. I swear to you. Now I feel I can roll out of bed and just go to my current boss and just be like, yo, this is where I'm thinking, this is what I'm trying to go. How do you think I can get there? Whereas in the past, it seemed like this really scary conversation. The other trick and tip I want to let you know is a lot of people are having these conversations. Many times, from my experience, they've been men. So don't worry that you're doing anything awkward. In fact, you're having the conversation that you're supposed to be having. You should have been having this conversation from day one. So don't really put yourself in this world where you're starting to feel like you're doing something that's an outlier. It's not an outlier. Having conversations about your aspirations are very much part of the job, and it's your manager's job to keep you and to want to make you happy. So most managers will be delighted. And for that small group of managers that may not be delighted, this is signal for you too. Maybe this is not a fit, and maybe you do need to go and find a place where everything is in harmony. Your strengths, what the company wants to do, what you want to do, is certainly jiving as much as possible so that you can live out your best life. I'm just checking to see if I have any questions. No other questions. So now I'm going to move to step 7, which is take courage. I've worked through that work. I've literally come up with the most awkward conversations that I could with Daria, where I was sweating, even though I had used up all my deodorant, I was still sweating. But it suddenly gets better. It's actually not that weird what you're trying to do. You may not say it in the best way. Give yourself grace and keep doing it, and you're just going to get better and better. And then certainly be open to an idea that this may not be a fit for you, and that is okay. That is still signal that you need to take seriously and figure out what you want to do with it. So that's it all in a nutshell from what I've learned through my journey. If you have any questions, obviously I'm happy to take it. Otherwise, thank you so much. I know we had some technical difficulties, so thank you for sticking with me.
Thank you so much, Monica. And I'm keeping an eye on time. I see we have about 2 minutes left till the session is over. So just really quick, if you have any questions, feel free to post it in chat and we can read. I do see we have one person who has lined up in moderation, Art Benoit. So I think if you're open to it, Monica can bring Art onto stage and we'll
Amazing.
see if we can get through in 2 minutes. Great. So I think I tried to bring Art on. I tried to use a moderation tool, but I'm not sure if she will still in the audience because it doesn't look like she's appearing. But yeah, I'm taking a look in chat. I see there's a lot of thank yous for all of
There's
all the
one.
practical life tips, for being so authentic. Your team is lucky to have you as your leader. And I
Thank
do
you.
see one parting question from Swathi on what advice would you give someone who needs or who has a career break?
I'm trying to make sure I understand the question. So if you've taken a break and you're now trying to come back to the workforce, I'll tell you personally, I don't think the whole world thinks like me, but I don't really care if you took a break. Like life happens. People take breaks. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're not interested in the area or that they're not going to be good. Um, I honestly, to me, it's not an issue. So I'm trying to think about why would someone really have an issue with you taking a break? We take a break. We take breaks for like people take breaks for personal reasons, which I think is absolutely wise if that's what you need. Um, so I guess my answer, being naive in why this should be a major problem, is like don't shy away from the fact that you took a break. Pivot the person back to what you bring. Like, oh, you had a break for visa issues. Oh my goodness, that is so reasonable. So, like, as an immigrant, that resonates so much. Of course, you had a break for visa issues. If someone asks you, you should say just that. I had a break for visa issues. Here are all the amazing things that I can do for you. That's it. You don't need to don't overthink that as a massive weakness. I don't think it'll come off as a like super worrisome gap. You took a break for your visa issues. Now here's who you are and here's what you can do. I took a
Amazing.
break to care for an ill family. That's amazing. Like you're empathetic, you're caring. Great. That's what you did. That's what you say. And then you pivot them back to the thing that you're going to do for them. Like, honestly, we are human beings at the end of the day. You want to join an org that understands that we're human beings. And more companies are starting to learn that it's very important to acknowledge our humanity, especially with the COVID. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Just say what you did and then move on to what it is you're going to do for us.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Monica. Really appreciate your time today and for the amazing workshop you gave. Even with all the technical difficulties in the beginning, I think it's clear that your infectious energy, everyone's saying they don't believe you're an introvert and they want you to sprinkle some of that pixie dust on them in real life. So, yeah, I think we're super excited and really grateful to have you with us today for sharing your stories as well as all the impactful tips that everyone can really take home and practice and start incorporating it into their crucial conversations at work. So thank you everyone for coming. Obviously, Monica's profile has her LinkedIn profile. I'm sure you're
Yes.
welcome to reach out and connect, and we'll see you around the rest of the conference.
Amazing. Thank you.
Sounds
Bye.
good. Thank you all.